Well, we talked about that youth movement on defense yesterday, but what about the other side of the ball? Are those recent recruiting classes producing quite as much as we're seeing on the defensive side of the ball? I mean, I'm not going to leave that out there hanging as a teaser or a cliffhanger. The reality is, the answer is no. We're seeing some, but not nearly as much as we're seeing on defense. What we're seeing on offense is Pitt's two deep being filled out by transfers. Which guys that are kind of relatively new to the program are making their way onto the two deep and into starting jobs, and which guys are, standing out so far in spring camp. Newcomers, guys who just arrived this spring or maybe arrived a year ago as transfers, and why is Pitt having to rely on so many transfers on offense? So let's talk about the offensive side of the ball, some of the transfers who are making their way onto the two deep and into starting jobs on today's Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Thursday. It's the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and of course, message boards to talk to other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com talking about Pitt sports, Pitt football, Pitt basketball, Pitt recruiting. And you can join that conversation with the best online community of Pitt fans that you're going to find at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. I always say, literally, I'll check the boards at night before I go to bed, see what people are talking about, maybe chime in on a few conversations. When I get up the next morning, there's either replies to things that I posted or new conversations started or new replies in different threads. There's always something going on. Somebody's always online and somebody's always talking about Pitt sports on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. So if you're a Pitt fan, you want the Pitt coverage, you want the Pitt conversation, the place to do it is at Panther-Lair.com. And then, of course, our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's where we put all of our Pitt video content. It's these daily morning Pitt videos every day of the week. A little bit of Pitt sports talk to get your day started. Well, Monday through Friday, I should say, not necessarily every day of the week. We don't do Saturday and Sunday morning Pitts. We take those days off, or at least give you a little break from the Pitt talk. But Monday through Friday, we always have some fresh Pitt talk for you about some fresh Pitt topics. And then we have lots of other stuff as well. We have our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night. We did that last night. Me and Jim Hammett get together at 8 p.m. to talk with you about Pitt sports, a little live back and forth. That's always fun to do. We have post-game shows during the season, after the football games and after road basketball games. I'm sure we'll do those again this fall and this winter. Those are always a lot of fun to do. And then we have, interviews and press conferences and practice highlights and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of video content to keep to fill, to scratch that itch is what I was trying to say. To whatever you need for Pitt video, we've got it at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you tune in to the YouTube channel every day and see what we've got. And you want to make sure you don't miss anything, click that subscribe button right down there. You see the little yellow .com right down there? There's a blue rectangle. That's a subscribe button. Click that thing and you will be subscribed to our YouTube channel and you won't miss any of our content. And then while you're at it, like this video. We'd really appreciate that. Do those two things and I'll be very happy. So we talked yesterday about the 2022 and 2023 recruiting classes and how they were really stepping up and filling a lot of the spots on the two deep for Pitt on defense, as we project it right now. We're in the third week of spring camp. We've seen, how the players have been lining up, who's been playing where, who's been getting reps, who's been getting talked up a lot. Who have the players and coaches been talking about? And they've been talking about guys like Cruz Brookins or Jesse Anderson or Braylon Lovelace and so on and so forth. And it occurred to me, and this is why I talked about it yesterday and wrote an article about it yesterday, and I'm writing about it in the 321 column for tomorrow. It occurred to me wow, a lot of these guys are coming out of those two recruiting classes, the 2022 and 2023 recruiting classes, really forming foundation of the defense. And so I went through a lot, broke down a lot of, info and analysis and on that side of the ball on the defense about what was going on there and who's standing out and who's making an impact. And like I say, I wrote about it and I talked about it. But then I started thinking about the other side of the ball. I started thinking about offense and thinking to myself, where are those guys on offense? Where's the 2022 and 2023 classes on offense? Where are those guys on the depth chart? If like close to half the depth chart on defense, the two deep, is getting built from those two recruiting classes, is it happening on offense as well? The answer is no. Because when I look down what I project the two deep to be right now, I've got about, and this is first and second team, about 3 guys from those two recruiting classes that I put on the two deep right now, 2022 and 2023. I've got Brian Baer as a starting right tackle. He's from the 2022 class. I've got BJ Williams as a starting right guard. I think he'll hold on to that spot after starting a lot of games last year as a true freshman. He's from that 2023 class. And then Kenny Johnson, who I think will be a starting wide receiver, is from that 2023 class as well. But that's it. That's it. Out of potentially, 22 open jobs, maybe you'll have one more guy from the 2023 class, a wide receiver like a Lamar Seymour or Zion Fowler-El or Izzy Polk, who steps in at one of those backup wide receiver spots. But I really don't see anybody else from those two classes getting into the two deep on defense. So or on offense, excuse me. So we're talking about, 10 or 11 spots on defense going to guys from those two classes, and only 3 or 4 on offense. So why is that? Where are those guys from those classes? Why haven't they made an impact? Why aren't more guys showing up? It's not like defense even had like smaller classes. Offense in 2023, they signed 7, 8, 9, 10 guys on offense. And in 2022, which was a smaller class overall, with 13 total recruits, they signed 7. So it's 17 recruits from those two classes, 2022 and 2023, and only projecting like maybe 4 to be on the two deep. Now, there have been transfers. There's been attrition. Addison Copeland from the 2022 class transferred. Carter Johnson transferred. Jordan Bailey never even made it out of that 2022 class. So there's 3 guys right at the top who are no longer here. The 2023 class, TJ Harvison has already transferred and left the program. So you're dwindling numbers in that way. And I'm not really sure where Harvison or Copeland ended up. I think Carter Johnson's still looking around. So you dwindle the numbers a little bit there. And then you also have the fact that, the 2023 class had 3 offensive linemen. And 2022 had it was another, 2 more. So you're talking about 5 offensive linemen. Those guys are going to take a little more time, although 2 of the projected starters come out of that group. So maybe they don't take as much time as I would have thought. But what happened to those 2 classes, and not so much what happened to those 2 classes, but where are the starting jobs going then? I mean, there are still guys hanging around from the 2021 and 2020 classes. I think I've got about 3 projected starters from the 2021 class, whether it's Nate Yarnell at quarterback or Rodney Hammond at running back or Gavin Bartholomew at tight end. There's Branson Taylor from the 2020 class. I think he'll be your starting left tackle. And Jason Collier from the 2019 class is probably going to be one of the backup guards, I would think. But you're really looking at transfers beyond that. I mean, as many as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe as many as 12 transfers filling out the two deep on offense. Why is that? Why are there more gaps and holes to fill on offense? And I mean, the sort of short answer, the easiest answer is that, well, they just haven't recruited all that well on that side of the ball. And that's kind of a simple and accepted reality of Pitt recruiting over the last 10 years, is that the recruiting has been much stronger on defense than it has been on offense. Not exactly breaking any new ground of analysis with that one, right? I think we all know that, and I think we've all understood that, and I think we've all accepted it. I think that's why you look at the numbers in the NFL draft. More defensive players drafted, more all-conference players selected on defense. The strength of this team outside of really 1 year has been the defense. Well, 2, I guess, has been the defense. 2016, you would say the strength of the team was the offense. 2021, you would say the strength of the team was the offense. Defense wasn't bad. I mean, it was bad in 2016. 2021, the defense was pretty good. They just happen to have Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison on offense. And if you have those 2 guys, even if you have a good defense, the offense is going to be the strength of the team. And I think they ultimately were. I mean, it's not a coincidence that Pat Narduzzi, the best offense Pitt has had under Pat Narduzzi led to the greatest success the team has had under Pat Narduzzi. But I think we would say in pretty much every other year, the defense was the strength of the team. 2015, I don't know if you would say one side of the ball was stronger than the other. 2016, certainly the offense, like I said. But 17, strength of the team was the defense. 2018 is an interesting sort of comparison point. I'm going off on a tangent down, going down a little bit of nostalgia here. 2018 is an interesting comparison because, obviously they had the great rushing attack with Quadri Olson and Darren Hall, 2 1,000-yard rushers. Passing game wasn't very good. Defense had its moments. The Carolina game was not one of its best moments. The UCF game was not one of its best moments. The Duke game was not one of its best moments. But when they really buckled down and won like 4 in a row or whatever, I think they ultimately won like 5 in a row and 6 out of 7 to win the Coastal Division. Or 5 out of 6, I guess it was, and 4 in a row. The defense played a big part of that. Defense was really good at Virginia. Defense was really good against Wake Forest. Defense was really good against Virginia Tech, even though the rushing game took all the attention there. The defense played well enough to win in the Sun Bowl. The defense, this would be a tougher sell, but the defense did an okay job against Trevor Lawrence in the ACC championship game. But I digress. 2018 was a weird year on a lot of levels. 2019, certainly the defense was the strength of the team. 2020 probably as well. 2021 we talked about. 22, I think, I talked yesterday when we kind of rehashed, or maybe it was the day before, we rehashed that 2022 season and the success they had in October or November. The defense was a big part of that and was really behind it. And you wouldn't really put any of the losses that Pitt had that year outside of maybe North Carolina. I don't think you'd put any losses on the defense. Those games were lost by the offense. Last year, defense certainly ran into some issues, but if you're going to compare, okay, how many games was the offense good? How many games was the defense good? There were more defensive good games than offensive good games. So long way around of saying the defense has been better than the offense over the past 10 years, and I think the recruiting reflects that and probably fuels it, to be quite honest. What we've seen over the last couple of off seasons, though, is a lot of backfilling of positions with transfers. And when I go down the 2 deep here, my projected 2 deep on offense, there's transfers all over the place. I think you're going to have a transfer at the backup quarterback spot, whether it's Christian Veyer, which is possible, or Eli Holstein, which is becoming more and more possible, if not even likely, the transfer from Alabama. I think you'll have transfer as the backup at running back. Possibly Derek Davis, possibly Desmond Reed, the transfer who came in from Western Carolina. I think you'll have a transfer as the backup at tight end. I think Jake Overman will probably be your listed backup at tight end. I think along the offensive line, I think there's going to be transfers backing up all over the place. I think one of the offensive tackle spots, Jackson Brown, the transfer from Cal, will probably be the backup. I think Lyndon Cooper, who came in as a transfer from NC State this offseason, is going to be a top backup at guard and potentially even emergency backup at center. So he's going to fill a few of those spots. I think at wide receiver, even if Konate Mumfield, Dejon Reynolds, and Kenny Johnson are the starters, you're going to see Sincere Lee and Raphael Williams. These guys are going to be your top reserves at wide receiver. You're going to see them all over the place. And so you're filling out, in addition to Mumfield and Reynolds both being transfers, as likely starters. So whoever your top 6 receivers are, if it's some combination of Mumfield, Reynolds, Kenny Johnson, another guy from that 2023 class, whether it's Lamar Seymour or Zion Fowler, whoever, one of those guys, and then CJ Lee and Raphael Williams, out of those 6, 4 are transfers. Even if they're transfers who have been here for a year or two, like Mumfield and Reynolds, they're still transfers. And so, you run down this list and you're like, wow. They've, on one hand, it's fortunate they've been able to restock, restock the offensive line and restock some of these positions with, quarterback in particular, with transfers. But on the other hand, what happened to the recruiting over those years? Now, I guess you could probably roll back the clock a little bit and say, okay, well, why didn't it come back to bite them in previous seasons? And, before they were able to backfill the way they have with transfers, in the last couple of years. And I think there are a couple answers to that. One, they were sort of protected for about 5 years at the quarterback position with Kenny Pickett and Nick Patty. They really didn't have a need to backfill the quarterback position with transfers until Kenny Pickett finally graduated. They brought in Max Brown in 2017 and brought in a guy here or there to serve in a backup role, but it was really Kenny Pickett with Nick Patty as his backup for the better part of those years. And so they had a little bit of security in that regard that they didn't need to go get transfers to refill that position. And then when the COVID year happened, they were able to sort of parlay that into extended careers for the offensive linemen. Now, it all worked out to be sort of funny because, 2021, all those offensive linemen came back from the ACC championship season and, they all got hurt. You know what I mean? Most of those guys didn't play. Most of those guys, missed a ton of time. I don't think they ever played a single snap together. And so, you ended up with younger players stepping in and getting, becoming first-time starters. And then you had more guys come back for last season. But again, injuries kind of resulted in it as well. But because they got those extra years out of guys, they were able to fill in spots where the recruiting had, probably and cover up for some of the recruiting holes, I think, outside of a few guys here and there like Branson Taylor or Ryan Baer, who were very good offensive line recruits. They were able to sort of cover up because they got those extra years out of guys like Carter Warren, Gabe Hoy, Jake Cradle, Owen Drexel, Blake Sabovic. They were able to, Matt Gonsalves, or not Gonsalves, Gonsalves didn't use his extra year. Marcus Minor did, though. They were able to sort of cover up some of the recruiting holes because they had those guys back. But now those, they're finally moving beyond having all those extra years, and they're finding that they have to fill some of those gaps with transfers. So they brought in Jackson Brown as a transfer. They brought in Ryan Jacoby as a transfer a couple years ago. They brought in Lyndon Cooper this offseason as a transfer to try to fill in some of those spots, where they needed an upgrade because the recruiting just hasn't been good enough. And we'll see how that works out. I was about to say something like, transfers of what, they've been able to keep the ship afloat in the, the post Kenny Pickett era by getting those transfers. But then the reality is they went, 12-13 over the 2 seasons after Kenny Pickett left. So I'm not sure how afloat the ship has been. They're going to need these transfers to work out. Whether it's transfer at quarterback, transfer wide receivers, I think that's a big one. They need the guys they brought in to play at a high level, Mumfield and Reynolds and Lee and Williams. And I'm not sure what to expect out of those guys. And that's sort of, built into some of the concern that I have about this 2024 season. I think a lot of people share it, is whether the transfers they brought in for, on offense are good enough. Is Derek Davis going to be able to step in after finally getting sort of acclimated to the running back position? That change that he made at LSU and then transferred to Pitt to play running back. Is he going to be ready to step in as a backup? Or is Desmond Reed, the transfer from Western Carolina, going to be able to step into that role? He's not very big. Is he going to be able to handle playing in the ACC? I think that's a legitimate question. You're going to need a tight end outside of Gavin Bartholomew. Is Jake Renda going to be ready, or are they going to need Jake Overman, the transfer, to step up? Is Lyndon Cooper going to be able to fill some of the gaps if they need someone to step in at one of the guard spots, or as a center if something happens with Terrence Moore? There's a lot of question marks. And then the quarterback position. Whether it's Vare or it's Holstein, if one of those transfers has to play, what are they going to get out of them? A lot of this program right now and a lot of this offense is being sort of, the fate of this offense to a large extent is being sort of hitched to transfers and relying on transfers. And you can do that in 2024. And a lot of people do that. That's what a lot of people do in 2024. I mean, transfers are a big part of the game. But at some point, if you're Pitt, you're going to have to upgrade the recruiting, the offensive recruiting in particular. And, so far, the 2022 and 23 classes haven't provided a whole lot in that regard. They're going to need more out of those guys, and they're going to need this 2024 class to provide some hits as well, or else they're going to have to keep going to the portal across the board for every position. Because the recruiting in the past hasn't exactly been good enough. And I know it's funny to say that when they recruited Kenny Pickett. They recruited Jordan Addison. They recruited Izzy Abanikanda. But those guys are few and far between. They need more. They need a higher level of player so they don't have to rely on transfers quite as much. You're always going to have transfers in the mix. Even on defense where the recruiting's been better, they still have transfers in the mix. And that's part of the game. And you'd be selling yourself short and doing your team a disservice if you don't follow that avenue. But at some point, you need the high school guys too. Particularly if you're Pitt. You need to be able to build a foundation of high school recruiting. Because if you don't, you see what the results are and what you need to, what you have to do to make up for it. All right, we got our mailbag tomorrow. If you're on Panther-Lair.com, make sure you check out the Between Fifth and Forbes message board where we've got the post there taking questions for the mailbag. You want to be part of the Morning Pitt mailbag, you can do it right there at Panther-Lair.com, the Between Fifth and Forbes message board. Post your questions, and we will answer as many as we can in tomorrow's mailbag. Make sure you like and subscribe. We appreciate that very much. I appreciate that very much and appreciate if you check out the website as well. I also appreciate you just watching the video. We do these every day, and definitely grateful for everybody who checks them out. So thank you. I hope you've had a great week so far. We're almost to the end of it. Enjoy your Thursday, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt mailbag right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.